Hey guys, welcome back to the shack. Today I'm going to be working on an order of tumblers for a customer. And I've had a lot of you guys ask me what I thought about the new WeCreat Lumos with the rotary attachment. I've been doing a little bit of testing with it. So today I decided to take this box of 12 tumblers that I've bought for this order of 10 tumblers and do a little testing and use this machine on an actual job. Now, considering the price of tumblers, it's a pretty hefty little experiment we got going, but so far it's turned out really well. So if you're interested in the machine, if you already have the machine or you've pre-ordered a machine, whatever the case may be, and you want to know how it does on tumblers, stick around for what it can do. And I'm going to also show you a few tips and tricks to setting it up closer toward the end of the video. So let's get started. All right guys, so getting all the components out, I've already connected the cable to the back of the machine. You're going to want to do that with the machine powered off. Make sure that it goes in there and you're able to tighten up the little hand nut that's on there. But I've already did that. The other part of the putting this thing together that you're going to want to do is take the two pieces that you have to the rotary and just slide them together with these little pins. If these set screws here on the top aren't loose on yours, you may have to back those off a little bit. But once you get this put together, you're basically just going to snug these down nice and firm to make sure that this thing doesn't slide apart. And once you tighten those down, now you have completed the rotary. You can use it using these four holes right here without doing that. If you were doing, let's say you were doing silicone bands or something like that, the way they've got it set up, you could actually set the rotary in the middle of this plate like so, and do that, and do smaller items such as, like I said, you can do the silicone bands, watch bands, you know, whatever you may have to go on here, bracelets, that kind of thing. But for the tumblers, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be basically taking this part right here, because the tumblers that I have, the work area that I'm going to be using is going to be right here in the middle of this plate, more or less. So I'm going to take the center of the plate and put it in the center of the rotary. And what you're going to need is a few of these small screws that came with your rotaries. These are like the little cap head Allen screws that most of the machines use. And I'm going to put two of them over here near the chuck on this part that's connected to the actual chuck itself. I'm going to be putting two of them over there, and then I'm going to put two over kind of closer to the middle of the work area on this side. These holes are slotted, and depending on which holes you use, I would recommend at least using two screws in these bigger, long, elongated holes than trying to use the small holes. The small holes seem to be a little harder to get everything lined up. So that's why I'm using the two on this part of the rotary, and then I'm going to use the two in the center of the rotary on this side. And you just put these four screws in here. Like I said, this is a little bit of extra work putting this together, and some folks might complain that it's too much work or whatnot, but I appreciate it because it does hold everything together. Once you get that plate on there, my recommendation, push it towards the back with your hand and make sure that these are like square with the plate between the plate and the rotary. Make sure everything is square. Kind of hold it that way and tighten these screws down. This is going to ensure that the rotary is not in there at an angle, because both of the screws are on this end over here are bottoming out against the material. So you should be good there. And now I've got the rotary put together and we're ready to go. The plate is made to the rotary at this point. The only thing about this configuration is that when you're in here messing with putting another tumbler on there, it can still move. So what I've did to counteract that is I'm using these little purple angle brackets here, the little jig brackets that they include. And I'm going to take these guys and I'm going to tighten them down, overlapping the plate to the machine there. And I'm also going to put another one over here because there's two of those guys. And once I get both of these put in there and get them tightened down, what that is going to do is hold the plate down in that hole, because with these tightened up, that plate can't come up and it can't go down because of the way the hole is shaped. And so once you get that put together, basically now the rotary and the machine are one piece of equipment. Now, I'll make sure everything's plugged in the back and reach back and power up the machine. So there we are. We've got the machine powered up, ready to go. And I'm gonna just shut the machine down so it's not as noisy. And I'm gonna show you guys kind of how I go about setting this up. With the tumblers that I'm using, these black tumblers here, I did notice that I like this little rubber grip part that they've got on here. I think it's pretty neat. But the problem that I was having is if I let this down and tighten this up, it's hard to get it to hold the tumbler without pushing it off. And the reason being is this tumbler has this ridge inside here, and that thing's reaching right to the edge of that ridge, and as I apply pressure, it's basically just spitting the cup out because this cup does have some taper to it. So what I did is I come up with an idea of the fact that this is just too long for this particular tumbler. So I took the laser and I've cut myself some rings right here. The rings are the size of the inside and outside diameter of the tumbler. And what I'm doing is actually I've oversized them just a little bit bigger than the tumbler, but I'm sliding them over the chuck, over the little rubber parts. And then all I got to do now is push the tumbler towards the chuck and tighten this little screw here on the chuck itself. And what happens is, now that I've got that spacer in there, it doesn't allow that rubber to get near the edge of this taper right here. So it's not pushing the tumbler out. It's actually gripping the tumbler the way it should. And you can see that's just like I said, it's just two little pieces of 4.7 millimeter plywood. I cut rings out, little circles, and I'm fitting them over the top of that rubber to act as a spacer, so that I know when I turn this tumbler, I can visually see that it is flat against that rotary, and it's also not causing the pressure of these locking jaws to push the tumbler out of there. Because without that, if you see, like if I open this up, let me open this up to where it's grabbing the tumbler. All right, so I can open it up to right there, and I can kind of push it and get it to where it's about there. Well, hang on. I can push it and get it to where it's about right there, and it's not pushing the tumbler off now. But the problem that I have is, look at that wobble. So with that wobble, the problem is here, I can't gauge how far I am off the shoulder with this setup like this. But by using these two rings here, I'm spacing this out equally all the way around, because those little rings are shouldering up on that metal shoulder, and then the other side is on the tumbler. So now my tumbler is exactly where I need it. So there is the physical setup. Now let's move over to the computer. All right, guys, so here's the WeCreat software. I will tell you, I am running a newer version that I just downloaded. I may have to get in there to be able to tell you. Hang on, there we go. This is software version 3.0.1. So, and it's saying I've already got the most recent version. So if you're running a different software, there may be differences. But guys, this is the software that I've been told to use with this machine, and that's what we're using. So to go ahead and set this up for the tumbler, we're going to go over here to New Project. I'm going to click on that. I do have my machine powered up and running back behind me. Previously, I have went in and set up the wireless. That's how I've been running this machine. Batched these 10 tumblers out and everything with this machine on wireless. So I'm going to click on the Lumos wireless right there. I wish we would do away with this and let us check away, but I understand they're trying to sell their memberships. But anyway, I'm just going to hit cancel on that. It opens every time you open the software. But anyway, got that going. So I'm going to refresh the image here. The one thing that I will give WeCreat with this machine, the camera's pretty handy. I don't necessarily see using it for placement as much as I do just being able to see things, mock things up, and it's a really good visual reminder about whether you're in focus or not, because you can actually see the dot on the screen. So that's kind of cool. So currently you'll notice that the machine is set to laser flat. That's not what we're doing. So we're going to click on that, and I'm going to change this over to laser cylindrical. Now that I've changed it over to cylindrical, I'm going to hit the refresh button. Now, for this job, the logo that I was sent was not sent to me in an SVG or anything, so I had to do a little work to that. I probably could have pulled off the trace in this software, maybe, I don't know. But I took the logo in Lightburn and I did trace it. And so what I did is I exported it from Lightburn as an SVG. I'm just going to import that logo. This is the image that I was sent, and I had to trace it. So there we go with that. I'm going to bring that in here. I've predetermined that the logo, in order to fit the way that I want it to, it needs to be 60 millimeters tall. So I'm just going to select that and set that at 60 millimeters. Once I do that, I'm going to select the entire design and let the software center it for me. But I didn't want it that far down, so what I did is I wound up selecting it and just kind of moving it up like maybe 10 or 15 millimeters. The one cool thing that I will say too with this machine, the framing option is pretty cool. That makes life so much easier to be able to frame with it. And it frames slow enough that you can kind of tell what you're doing. So that was pretty handy. And for settings, I wasn't sure about the settings, and I was like, I probably should just do a bunch of testing. That's what we recommend for people to do. But at the same time, they marketing this machine as being able to take it out of the box and make stuff with it. So I'm like, you know what? We're going to take it out of the box and we're going to make stuff with it. So I go into the settings and I literally go into metal, stainless steel tumbler, black, click on that. That's the settings I went with, and you see the results. So that was pretty good, pretty good. One thing that I will, in case you're not familiar with doing these and you've never done them before, the little seamstress measuring tape, flexible measuring tape that comes with the machine, comes with the rotary, this is where you're going to measure they call it the perimeter, but it's going to be the circumference or the diameter, and you're going to put that number in here. Like with the ones that I did, I think it was 272 was the circumference. So if I put 272 in here, it's going to automatically calculate the diameter, which is 86.5. So you can put either number in here. So 272 is the circumference is the easiest to do, in my opinion, with the seamstress tape. So that's the one I would recommend doing unless you have a different way of measuring it. And then just put that in here. The 3D preview is pretty cool. It kind of gives you an idea of what it's going to look like. And like I said, you can do it on different materials. I don't know how, I don't know how well it represents the tumbler, because to me, the tumbler that I engraved looks much better than this. But it does give you a representation of what the design is going to look like wrapped around a cylinder. So that's the thing with some designs, is even though they're round, they may not look round. So we'll go ahead and I'll just go ahead and touch on that with you right quick. So what we're going to do, I'm going to take and I'm going to make a circle. And I'm going to hold shift and see if it does it. Okay, yeah. Hold shift. And I'm making this circle a perfect circle, right? So we're going to make it 70 millimeters, perfect circle. Do it on a feel. And we'll go ahead and put it in the center of the workspace. All right, so I'm going to 3D preview that. This is where you hear a lot of us talking about how the cylindrical effect on circles makes them look like egg-shaped. Well, this is actually a very good representation of what's happening here. And this is a perfect circle. You can see right here, I click on it, it's 70.5 by 70.5. But when you hit the 3D preview, it does look a little egg-shaped. So don't freak out. My recommendation, if that concerns you, you either have to oversize your graphic or just don't do circles. All right, guys, so let's go over here and see how this machine does on these tumblers and wrap this thing up. All right, so I used one of my little trusty clocks right here, my little stopwatches, And I wanted to show you guys how long it was going to take to do these things. One thing that I will say is with this machine, because it is unidirectional, meaning it only engraves going, say, from left to right. It's not going to be as fast as some other machines would be running the exact same speed and power, because it is having to travel twice as far, because it goes from left to right engraving, and then from right to left not engraving, which is less efficient in my opinion as far as speed goes. But it did do a really good job. So as far as the quality of the engrave, I can't knock it. It done a good job. I do think that maybe that's something they can improve in the future to get a little faster engrave. But to do both sides of this thing right here only took me around 7 minutes. So I'm just going to kind of speed through here and show you towards the end. All right, so the front side, you're looking at about 3 minutes and 36 seconds for the front. I'm doing both sides on these. You'll notice now that I'm just rotating that tumbler around. And the way that I'm doing this so easily is in that little picture in a picture you see there. That's a piece of painter's tape and a Sharpie. That's all that is. I make a reference line to use to know, when I rotate that thing around, which side needs to be up or down. And when I rotate that around, it lets me know that they're opposite of each other. So I don't have to go through the trouble of setting up two logos on each engrave. You can do that, but with this design, it's just as simple just to do one logo and then flip the tumbler and hit it again. You could always do a full wrap if you wanted, instead of doing the single logos. With this one, I started to do that, but I figured, what the heck, we just do it this way. And that's the way I went ahead and did them. There's only 10 of them. And you'll see here, we're at about 6 minutes and 58 seconds. It's winding down. This whole tumbler took just a fuzz over 7 minutes, front and back. So if you do the math, $20 for the engrave, and I did one in 7 minutes. Not a bad profit margin for doing 10 of these guys. So let's wrap it up, guys. All right, guys. So there you go. Ordered 12 tumblers for this job, but I really only ended up using 10 because that was the order. The order was for 10 tumblers, and I ordered 12 because you know how it is. A lot of times you'll need at least one for testing, and it's always good to have that extra one for an oops in case you make a mistake or something goes terribly wrong. Fortunately for me, this time, the very first one I did turned out great. The settings worked. All I used was, as you saw, was the settings inside software, the preset settings that WeCreat includes, and it worked really well. And then go back behind there. Of course, I always use my old trusty rubbing alcohol and a magic eraser. There's a bunch of other things that you can use. I will caution you, if you've never done tumblers before, be a little careful with the magic eraser. If you bear down too much, it's basically a 2000 grit sandpaper, and you can actually leave a little rough look on the coating. So you want to use that carefully, not to exert too much force. But yeah, there you go. With these tumblers, guys, these are double-sided, and with anything double-sided costs a little more for me to do. And like I said, the process is a little more intense, and I showed you that earlier as far as how to go about making sure that you have them opposing each other. It's not super difficult, but it's worth charging that little bit extra. So normally I would just charge $15 for each burn if it was a single logo. But to be honest with you, for me to be able to just to... All right, guys, so that's what happens if you forget to charge the receiver for your microphone. Now, with this video, I would like to say, first of all, so far, I'm impressed with the rotary setup and the way that the rotary attaches to the machine. That was a very welcomed innovation on WeCreat's part. I'm glad to see that they took the time to come up with something that way. Being able to have that attached and not have to worry about it moving during the job, especially when you're doing 10 tumblers, that you don't think about having to make sure everything's square. You don't think about it being built real time consuming until you're doing 10 of them. And then it will add up. So the peace of mind of me knowing that once I got that tumbler on there, got it chucked in correctly, it wasn't going to move, that was definitely a plus. The only thing, like I said, with this machine, I had to make those spacers because of the rubber was kind of pushing out on the tumbler. If the tumbler didn't have that little shoulder in there, that wouldn't be an issue, but I feel like most tumblers are going to have that, or the potential that they could have that. Using my little spacer ring solution, anybody that has this machine, as long as the mouth of the tumbler, assuming it's not going to be any bigger than the chuck, you should be able to cut out a piece of material from wood or acrylic or whatever to use as kind of a spacer. And so I think that's not a big obstacle. I think that, you know, the little hack that I use with the spacers being on there, I think that's a good way to go to get quick, consistent results. If you're only doing one of that particular tumbler, I don't know that it would be worth going through the trouble of cutting those out. You could just take a little bit more time and line everything. But when you're batching them out like that, every second counts. So if you can save 10 to 15, 20 seconds in your setup and get consistent results, that's kind of where you want to go. But the machine, it performed really well. One of the only other hang-ups that I had was I wish the button on the top, I wish when you double-clicked it, it would automatically repeat the job that was last performed. We could even just add that as an option, and so that it's not always on, but you could turn it on if you want to. I think that would be a welcomed upgrade for doing batch products, and maybe that's in there. I tried doing the tap several times and it did not work. So maybe I was just maybe I didn't have the right combination, but I think that's something that we need to add to the firmware later on. Like I said, the only other thing that me and Steve over at Vintage's workshop, and he has the machine he'll be doing reviews on as well, we discussed the fact that a set of safety glasses, especially just the cheap glasses like that come with most machines, would not be a bad idea for this machine. I understand that in its intended format, it has the door, and in flat mode there's really no reason for you to need glasses because it's enclosed. But when operating with the rotary and making adjustments and stuff like that, the door is not all the way closed on it, and you do have some reflective light, and there's always that possibility that you're going to raise it without thinking or not lower it, you know. So I think glasses being included, especially with the rotary, would be a good idea. The benefit over the cost to WeCreat, I think, is definitely something I would look into. But all in all, guys, it done a really good job. $200 on tumblers, and the job time, complete with setup and everything, I think was less than 2 hours, easily less than 2 hours, if I wasn't recording and everything. So you're looking at $100 an hour that I've made today with this machine, just doing these tumblers. And if I'd had more, my return would be better, because that initial setup, if I'd have been doing 20 or 30, that initial setup eventually gets to where it costs you less and less, because you're the number of parts that you're turning out per setup. So all in all, guys, the rotary for this machine so far has been a great addition, and that's about all I got on it. So, all right, guys, so check the links down below. Those will be affiliate links. I'll have links for the WeCreat Lumos as well as the tumblers, because I know you guys are going to ask me about the tumblers. And you already have the settings because they're in the WeCreat software. So there you go. Another project for you guys. Like I said, it wouldn't take too many of these tumblers to be able to make your money back. Not a bad thing. If smaller tumblers are your game, obviously this machine will do it. Haven't tried the bigger ones yet. Maybe there'll be a video in the future trying some big Stanley 40s or something on there. Who knows? What do you think? Drop me a comment down below and let me know what you'd like to see. And until next time, guys, be safe and have a good day.